Could you imagine reporting your pregnant wife to the police over $100? The story began when blue emergency lights illuminated the white exterior of a modest home in Warner Robins, Georgia. These were the type of flashing lights no homeowner ever wants to see parked outside their residence. People from the neighborhood gathered at the ends of their driveways, speaking in hushed tones that drifted through the thick, humid evening atmosphere. At the center of this chaos stood Danielle Ellison, heavily pregnant at 9 months. Without shoes, dressed in a loose-fitting shirt that stretched over her swollen belly, positioned on the front porch with her arms restrained behind her as a police officer secured cold handcuffs around her wrists. "Please, I'm begging you not to do this," Danielle pleaded, her voice breaking while tears flowed down her face, creating clear paths through the perspiration on her skin. She gazed at her spouse, the person she had placed her faith in, the man who had vowed to cherish her through all circumstances. "Cody, please. You understand who I am. I never stole your money. I promise you, I didn't." Cody Ellison remained motionless. He stood rigid at the top of the steps, with crossed arms and a clenched jaw. His expression resembled a tempest, filled with rage, letdown, and an emotion he couldn't identify. "You've been deceiving me for weeks, Danielle," he finally stated, his tone quiet yet cutting enough to pierce through the murmurs from outside. "And I've had enough. Do you think I'm foolish? $100 doesn't simply vanish from the drawer on its own." Danielle shook her head frantically, attempting to control her breathing between her sobs. "Cody, I haven't been dishonest. I would never rob you. Not at this time. Never." Her words were interrupted as the officer carefully escorted her toward the police vehicle. The sound of her bare feet on the gravel combined with the quiet click of the car door opening. For an instant, everything felt surreal, as if this situation couldn't actually be occurring on their peaceful residential street. Yet it was happening. As Danielle settled into the back seat, grimacing from the hard vinyl pressing against her pregnant body, she turned her head to gaze at Cody one final time. Her eyes showed no anger. They weren't even begging anymore. They were hollow. That emptiness struck Cody more forcefully than any words she might have spoken. However, he remained quiet because in his thoughts, he believed he was acting as any responsible man should. He was safeguarding their future, their finances, their family. At least, that's what he convinced himself. The door closed. The patrol car departed slowly, with red and blue lights casting colors across the small homes on the street. The neighbors began returning inside, though Cody could sense their disapproval lingering in the sticky Georgia atmosphere like smoke. He rubbed the back of his neck and whispered to himself, "You brought this on yourself, Danielle." But as the sound of sirens disappeared into the distance, an uncomfortable feeling formed deep in his gut, a sensation he didn't yet understand. Because this wasn't the conclusion. This was merely the start. What Cody was unaware of was that before the evening ended, everything he believed he knew about his wife and himself was going to be destroyed beyond repair. 8 hours before this incident, life within that same household appeared almost ordinary, at least superficially. The late summer sunlight streamed through the window blinds, illuminating the kitchen where Danielle stood at the sink, washing a cluster of grapes. Her back was sore, her ankles had swollen, and every movement felt more laborious than before. 9 months pregnant and operating on 3 hours of sleep, her only desire was to get through the day without losing her temper with anyone. "Honey, have you spotted my phone?" Cody's voice echoed from the living room. He was already partially dressed for work, wearing a dark gray shirt that hugged his broad shoulders. Danielle rolled her eyes and responded, "It's likely buried under that pile of clothing you left on the sofa." He entered the kitchen, grinning. "I mentioned I'd fold those later. You said that 3 days ago." She smiled weakly despite her exhaustion. Moments like these, when they tease each other, used to feel natural. Recently, though, even their jokes seemed to carry tension neither wanted to acknowledge. Cody leaned against the counter, observing her. "Are you all right? You've been moving slowly all morning." "Slowly?" She gave him a pointed look. "Try carrying a bowling ball around in 90-degree weather and then discuss being slow." He laughed and kissed her forehead. "Valid point. Listen, I'm going to get something from the dresser before I leave. I need cash for lunch." Danielle nodded, placing a grape in her mouth as she returned to the sink. She didn't observe how his eyes narrowed slightly when he walked toward their bedroom. She didn't hear the quiet curse he uttered a minute afterward. When Cody came back, his demeanor had shifted, harder, more tense. "Did you take any money from the drawer?" His tone was no longer casual. Danielle looked up, puzzled. "What? No. Why?" "There was 200 in there yesterday. Now there's barely 100. She frowned, setting the grapes down. "Maybe you used some." "I would recall if I spent $100. Danielle." His voice grew sharper. "Are you certain you didn't take any? Why would I steal money from you?" She blinked, shocked by the accusation. "Cody, seriously, we're expecting a baby. I'm not sneaking cash like some criminal." But he didn't respond immediately. He simply stared at her as if trying to decipher something in her expression. That stare made her stomach churn. "Cody," she said softly, "do you genuinely believe I would do such a thing?" For a moment, he almost relented. Almost. Then he shook his head and grabbed his keys. "I have to leave. We'll discuss this later." The door shut behind him with a heaviness that felt more significant than words. Danielle remained there, hands resting on her belly, feeling the baby move against her ribs as one question burned in her thoughts. Why doesn't he have faith in me anymore? But trust wasn't Cody's strength, especially regarding money. He had grown up witnessing his parents argue over every dollar, watching bills accumulate, seeing eviction notices appear at their door. For him, money wasn't merely paper. It represented security, control, evidence that he wasn't like his father. Right now, 100 missing dollars felt like the beginning of everything he'd spent his life avoiding. What Cody didn't realize was that Danielle harbored her own secret, a secret she had kept for weeks. By tonight, that secret would shatter their lives completely. When Cody returned to the driveway that evening, the Georgia sun had descended low, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. His shift at the auto shop had been lengthy, but the missing money remained in his thoughts like an oil stain he couldn't remove. As he entered the house, the aroma of fried chicken filled the air. Danielle was at the stove, humming quietly as she turned the pieces in the pan. Her hair was pulled back, and she had one hand on her hip, the other steadying herself against the counter. 9 months pregnant and still preparing dinner. He noticed this, but it didn't ease the tension in his chest. "Hi," she said, smiling faintly without turning around. "How was work?" "Busy." He dropped his keys on the table and leaned against the wall, arms folded. "Where's the $100, Danielle?" The smile disappeared from her face like water down a drain. She set the tongs down slowly and turned to face him. "We're still discussing this." "Yes," he said bluntly, because it didn't magically vanish. She sighed, running a hand over her belly. "Cody, I told you I didn't take it. Perhaps you miscounted. Or maybe I'm not stupid, Danielle." His voice cut through the kitchen, sharp enough to make her flinch. "I know precisely how much was there. I placed 200 in that envelope, and now there's 100 remaining." She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes glistening but firm. "Do you really think I would steal from you? From us? While I'm about to deliver your child?" He didn't answer immediately. That silence spoke more loudly than anything. Danielle shook her head slowly. "Incredible. Just incredible." "Don't do that," Cody said, pointing at her. "Don't pretend you're the victim, hey. You've been acting strangely lately, concealing things. You think I don't notice?" Her mouth dropped open. "Strangely, Cody, I'm 9 months pregnant. Everything about me is different right now." But he wasn't truly listening. His mind was already constructing a narrative. Danielle taking money from the drawer, perhaps talking to someone behind his back, maybe hiding something he didn't want to discover. "Where is it?" he demanded again, stepping closer. "I don't know," she yelled, her voice breaking. "I swear on everything. I don't know." For a second, they just gazed at each other, both breathing heavily. The baby kicked against her ribs, and Danielle winced, pressing one hand to her side. "You need to settle down," she whispered, tears streaming down her face now. "For the baby's well-being, just calm down." But Cody couldn't. Not when the image of that empty space in the envelope burned in his brain like a warning signal. He turned away, pacing across the kitchen, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. "If you're lying to me," he muttered half to himself. "I'm not lying." Danielle's voice cracked. He stopped and looked at her, really looked at her. Sweat on her forehead, hair sticking to her neck, belly so large she could barely stand upright. She didn't appear like a thief. She looked like the woman he had promised to protect. And still, he didn't believe her. Because in Cody's mind, trust wasn't freely given, it was earned. Tonight, Danielle had failed that test in his eyes. But Cody was about to make a choice that would cost him more than money, a decision he could never reverse. Dinner remained untouched on the stove, the smell of fried chicken now hanging heavily in the air. Danielle had collapsed onto the couch, one hand resting on her belly, the other wiping tears from her cheeks. Cody paced the living room like a man trying to escape his own thoughts. "Cody." Her voice was soft now, trembling. "Please, just sit down. Let's discuss this like mature adults. We're about to have a baby. This isn't beneficial for either of us." He stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Discuss what? About how my money just disappears. About how you're lying directly to my face." "Lying?" Danielle blinked, stunned. "Cody, I swear on my life, stop saying that." His voice thundered through the house, making her flinch. "You think words have any meaning? I grew up surrounded by broken promises. Danielle, I'm not about to be deceived by my own wife." Her chest rose and fell in irregular bursts as tears flowed freely. "Deceived? Cody, I'm 9 months pregnant with your child. Do you honestly believe I'm scheming against you? Over $100. Money is money," he snapped. "You don't value it. That's the issue. First, it's 100. Then what? Do you think I'm foolish? You think I don't see what's occurring here?" Danielle stared at him, mouth open in shock. "What's occurring here is that you don't trust me. After everything we've experienced together, after everything I've sacrificed for you, you believe I'm stealing from you? Is that what I represent to you now? Some gold digger?" Cody's nostrils flared as he grabbed his phone from the coffee table. "If you won't tell me the truth, someone else will." Danielle's heart sank. "What are you doing?" "Calling the police." His voice was like steel. "They can resolve this." Her breath caught. No, Cody, please, you can't." She pushed herself up from the couch, struggling to balance her swollen body. Her feet were bare, her legs shaking as she moved toward him. "Don't do this. Please, for God's sake, don't do this to me." "Then tell me where the money is," he barked. "I don't know." Her voice cracked as she gripped the back of a chair for support. "Cody, this is madness. You're my husband. We're supposed to be partners." But he had already pressed the numbers. 911. Danielle's chest tightened as panic flooded her body. She reached for his arm, tears blurring her vision. "Please, I didn't take it. I swear to you, I didn't take it." Cody pulled his arm free, turning his back as he spoke into the phone. "Yes, I need an officer at 182 Cedar Point Lane. Yes, theft in my own home." Danielle let out a broken sob, sinking to her knees on the hardwood floor. The baby shifted inside her, a sharp kick under her ribs. Every instinct screamed for her to protect her child, but she felt helpless, trapped in a nightmare from which she couldn't awaken. When Cody ended the call, the silence was deafening. Danielle stared at him through tear-soaked lashes, her voice barely audible. "Do you despise me that much?" His throat constricted, but his expression remained cold. "I despise being lied to." The room felt heavy with a darkness neither could identify. Danielle turned her head slowly toward the door, almost expecting to hear the sirens already. Her mind raced with one thought: this can't be happening. He can't really do this to me. But Cody believed he was doing the right thing. He believed that standing firm now would prevent him from being taken advantage of later. What he didn't know was that the choice he made in that moment would not only shatter his wife's heart, it would shatter him too. The knock arrived faster than Danielle anticipated, hard, authoritative, and loud enough to shake the doorframe. She was still sitting on the floor, wiping her face with trembling hands, when Cody strode across the room and opened the door. 2 officers stood there, uniforms crisp against the fading evening light. The taller one, a black woman with a firm but calm expression, spoke first. Mr. Allison. Yes, Cody said, his voice tight. Thank you for coming. It's her. He pointed over his shoulder. She took money from me. Danielle's head jerked up. Are you serious right now? Her voice cracked as she scrambled to her feet, gripping the chair for balance. The officer raised her hands slightly. Let's just talk for a moment. What's happening here? What's happening? Danielle shot back, tears streaking her face. Is that my husband has lost his mind. I didn't steal anything. I'm 9 months pregnant. I can barely bend down to tie my shoes. The second officer, a stocky man with a shaved head, stepped forward. We're just here to figure this out, but we need you to remain calm. Calm? Danielle let out a bitter laugh that dissolved into sobs. He called you on me, his wife, the mother of his child, over $100. Neighbors had begun to gather outside, drawn by the flashing lights from the patrol car. Whispers floated through the humid air. What's happening? Is that Danielle? Oh my God, isn't she due any day now? Danielle glanced toward the open doorway and saw Mrs. Jenkins from across the street standing there with her arms crossed, eyes wide. Behind her, 2 teenage boys were recording on their phones. Danielle's stomach twisted with shame. The female officer said gently, I'm going to need you to turn around for me. Danielle froze. What? No, please. You can't do this. I didn't do anything. It'll be quick, the officer assured her. We just need to take you in and get this sorted out. Danielle turned to Cody, her eyes desperate, pleading. Cody, please stop this. Tell them the truth. Tell them you believe me. Cody's jaw clenched, his hands gripping the doorframe so tightly his knuckles turned white. He didn't say a word, and that silence, more than the flashing lights, more than the officers, broke her. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. She flinched at the sound, her chest heaving as she fought to catch her breath. Please, she whispered through tears as the officers led her out the door. Please don't let them take me. The neighbors' whispers grew louder as Danielle shuffled toward the patrol car, her bare feet scraping against the gravel. Someone muttered, Isn't that a shame? Pregnant and going to jail. Danielle kept her eyes on the ground, her vision blurring. Every step felt like a blow to her dignity. She had never felt so small, so humiliated. The officers helped her into the back seat carefully, but the hard vinyl pressed against her belly, making her wince. She shifted uncomfortably, chains clinking against the doorframe as they closed it behind her. Cody stood on the porch, arms crossed, staring at the patrol car as it pulled away. For a moment, he felt triumphant, like he had taken control, like he'd proven a point. But then his eyes drifted to the empty chair in the living room through the open door. The blanket Danielle had been using was still crumpled on the couch. Her phone sat on the coffee table, its screen lighting up with a text. Doctor's appointment confirmed for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Something twisted in his chest. He ignored it, pushed it down deep, because in his mind he had done what he had to do. But while Cody stood there convincing himself of that, Danielle sat in a freezing cell a few miles away, clutching her belly as the first signs of labor began to ripple through her body. The holding cell was small and smelled faintly of bleach and something sour. Danielle sat on a cold metal bench, arms wrapped awkwardly around her swollen stomach. Her wrists were free now. The officers had removed the cuffs, but the sting from where they had pressed into her skin still lingered. She tried to focus on breathing. In, out. Anything to block out the echo of the other women's voices in the cell across from hers. But then came a sharp cramp that made her double over. Her hand shot to her belly, and a panicked gasp slipped from her lips. Oh no! Oh no! Oh, no! No, she whispered to herself, tears filling her eyes. Not now. Please, not now. Across town, Cody sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the envelope on the dresser. He had pulled it out the moment he walked back inside, ripping it open as if proof would spill out. Still 100 left. Nothing more, nothing less. He rubbed his temples, trying to quiet the buzzing in his head. He should have felt vindicated. Instead, there was only a sick heaviness in his gut. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking through his thoughts. Unknown number. He answered. Mr. Allison. The voice on the line was calm, professional. This is Officer Lane from the Warner Robins Police Department. We need you to come down to the county hospital." Cody's stomach dropped. "What? Why? What happened?" "Your wife. She's in labor." Everything inside him went still. His mouth went dry. "What? Labor? Now?" "Yes, sir. She went into labor in the holding facility. We've transferred her to Houston County Medical. You need to get her." Cody hung up without another word and bolted out the door, keys slipping in his sweaty hands. The drive felt endless, his knuckles white against the steering wheel as his mind screamed, "What did you do, Cody? What did you do?" When he reached the hospital, a nurse led him down a sterile hallway to a room where Danielle lay in a bed, her face pale and damp with sweat. She looked exhausted, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts as monitors beeped steadily beside her. For the first time since this nightmare began, Cody saw her not as the enemy, not as someone trying to hurt him, but as the woman he loved, the woman carrying his child. He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Danielle," her eyes opened slowly. When they met his, there was no warmth, just emptiness. "You?" she whispered, her voice raw. "Did this?" Cody swallowed hard, guilt clawing at his chest. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have. Save it," she croaked, turning her head away as another contraction ripped through her body. She let out a low moan, gripping the side rails until her knuckles whitened. A nurse stepped in, checking her vitals. "She's progressing fast. Baby's coming soon." Then to Cody, "If you're staying, stand over there and don't get in the way." Cody nodded silently, moving to the corner of the room. His mind spun as he watched the woman he'd betrayed fight through wave after wave of pain. And then, like a cruel punch to the gut, the truth finally surfaced, uninvited, undeniable. The missing $100, the secrecy. He remembered the text on her phone earlier that day, doctor's appointment. Danielle wasn't lying. She wasn't sneaking money for herself. She was saving it for something connected to the baby. When the nurse stepped out for a moment, Cody leaned closer, his voice trembling. The money. It was for the appointment, wasn't it? Danielle didn't look at him. A single tear slid down her cheek. Ultrasound. Extra tests. Because the baby wasn't moving much last week. I wanted to make sure he was okay. Insurance doesn't cover everything. Her words hit him like a freight train. His knees went weak and he gripped the back of the chair for support. All the anger, all the accusations, all the pride. It crashed down on him in an instant, leaving nothing but shame. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a scream tore through the room as Danielle pushed with everything she had. Nurses flooded in. The doctor followed. Chaos filled the room as life forced its way into the world, and Cody stood there, useless, broken, realizing the truth. He hadn't just lost $100 tonight. He'd lost something far more valuable. But the final blow, the real cost of his decision, was still waiting on the other side of that delivery room door. The cries filled the room before Cody could even catch his breath, sharp, high-pitched, alive. For one fleeting second, relief washed over him, because their baby was here, safe. "It's a boy," the doctor said, his voice calm and steady as he placed the tiny, squirming bundle into the nurse's arms. Danielle didn't look at Cody. Her eyes were locked on their son, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The nurse leaned closer, her voice soft. "Would you like to hold him?" Danielle nodded weakly. The nurse placed the baby in her arms, and for the first time all night, her face softened, not for Cody, but for the little life resting against her chest. She whispered something to him, words Cody couldn't hear because the pounding in his ears was too loud. He wanted to step closer, to share the moment, to be the father he had imagined himself being for 9 months. But when he tried, Danielle's voice stopped him cold. "Don't," she said without looking up. Just that one word, and it sliced through him deeper than any argument ever could. Cody froze, his throat burning. He opened his mouth, desperate to explain, to apologize, to somehow fix what he had broken. But what do you say when sorry isn't enough? Hours later, the baby slept in a clear plastic bassinet beside Danielle's bed. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Cody sat in the corner, hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white, staring at the floor. Danielle finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you know what it feels like to be handcuffed while carrying your child?" Cody swallowed hard, his chest aching. "Danielle, I was wrong. I let my pride, my past, your pride," she let out a bitter laugh, one that hurt more than her silence. "You didn't just let pride ruin us, Cody. You humiliated me. You took away the one person I thought I could count on. And for what? $100. He shifted forward in the chair, voice breaking. "It wasn't about the money. It was everything. Growing up broke, watching my parents fight over every penny. I swore I'd never let that happen to us. And you just did," she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. "You became the very thing you hated. You destroyed our trust because of something that didn't even matter." Her words hit harder than any blow. Cody felt the weight of every choice pressing down on him like a cinder block. He wanted to rewind the clock, to take back the phone call, to erase the image of her standing on that porch in handcuffs while neighbors whispered. But life doesn't give do-overs. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice a whisper. "I'd give anything to undo what I did." Danielle turned her face away, stroking the baby's tiny head with trembling fingers. "Sorry doesn't fix this, Cody. Trust isn't something you can glue back together once it's broken." Her voice cracked, and she didn't finish the sentence. For a long time, they sat in silence, the kind that feels heavier than words. Cody stared at the baby, wondering if his son would ever know him as a father worth respecting, wondering if Danielle would ever look at him the same way again. As dawn broke and light spilled through the blinds, Cody understood something he should have known all along. Love isn't about control. It isn't about keeping score or proving a point. It's about trust. And once you let pride take that away, you've already lost more than you can imagine. He rose quietly, pressing a kiss to the baby's forehead before stepping toward the door. Danielle didn't stop him. She didn't even look up. And that silence told him everything. Because some mistakes don't just cost money. They cost the very people you swore you'd protect. Don't let pride destroy what love built. Trust is fragile, and the smallest suspicion can burn bridges you'll never rebuild. Before you act, ask yourself, is this worth losing the people who matter most? If this story resonated with you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Love requires trust, and trust requires humility. And if you're holding on to pride right now, let it go before it costs you everything.